today we are looking at the thing itself. So I went through and looked at some of the words that Holmes uses in this first chapter. He uses the words first cause, spirit, mind, invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes, power back of creation, the thing itself, God. He also wrote that if one, through the conscious use of his knowledge, can produce a certain result, he must know what he is dealing with. Now, indeed, I would like to say that I think that could be a topic of its own. If we, through our consciousness, can produce a certain result, we must know what we're dealing with. For me, we are dealing with that still small voice within. I think that Holmes uses all these words to express the thing itself, not because he told me this, but because I'm making this assumption, in an effort to help each of us, each one of us, with our variety of personalities, to find a word that works for us. And I've noticed through the years that we do that. Often people will say, my favorite word for God is thus and such. Well, my favorite word for God is consciousness. I think that Holmes wants us to have a personal relationship with God. And that begins with the words that we do use. And not only the word that we use, but the feeling that it brings within us. The thing itself emphasizes that God isn't a separate person or entity. It is a universal, indivisible essence and substance of all existence. It is the underlying principle of life itself. In quantum science, they use the words ground of all being, and I have said that many times. I find those words, ground of all being, to be really important. And when we're talking about the word ground, it grounds us in the idea of the beingness of all life. And what is that energy? Consciousness. We operate first and foremost as a conscious energy of life. Ernest Holmes founded the science of mind about 100 years ago. He didn't want to make it into an organized religion, but he did because he was told repeatedly that if he didn't, it would just disappear. His words, his teachings, his writing is just incredible. And he wrote the We Believe statements. I would like to share the first one with us today as we look at the thing itself. He wrote, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but it is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-givingness of God, the thing itself.
If you've been here very long, you know that I really do believe in this teaching, and I really do love this teaching, and I would say I believe it works, but I think I can go even further and say I know it works. I've seen it work so many times, not only in my life, but the lives of others, and so there's no doubt whatsoever that it does what we claim that it does. In the very first part, of Science of Mind. Ernest Holmes says this, and I believe it really kind of backs up why I have found so much confidence in it. He says, we all look forward to the day when science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the visible to the invisible. Revelation must keep faith with reason and religion with law, while intuition is ever spreading its wings for greater flights. And science must justify faith in the invisible. He's talking about the idea that science and spirituality, which have always been like oil and water, you can't mix the two, are actually interchangeable and actually work together with each other. And when religious people begin to understand modern day science and scientists begin to understand spirituality, both of them will progress. And the reason that's important to me is because I believe belief is really important. And in this teaching, belief is a primary aspect of achieving that which you wish to experience in life. And I believe that things that give me evidence give me greater faith. And so my faith system is increased by seeing things actually happen to prove to me that it works. In Science of Mind, we use science to validate and understand the nature of God. Now, I know there's a lot of questioning in the world about whether science is legitimate or not, and whether it has anything whatsoever to do with religion. And quite often, if you go to a church down the street, they're going to poo-poo scientific investigations and so on. But I believe it's really important. And I have a 1929 New York Times at home that says, there's an article that says 9 out of 10 doctors agree that smoking Lucky Strikes is good for your health. Well, I don't know that I believe 9 out of 10, those 9 out of 10 doctors. I don't know that I believe 9 out of 10 scientists on certain points, but I do know what works in my life. I've never smoked a Lucky Strike, and I've never seen it do any good for anybody who has smoked them, but I won't be judgmental about that because I really don't know. But I do know this teaching works. And I have seen it work many, many, many times in little ways and huge ways. Science of Mind uses the science to validate natural law. Since the time of Descartes and Newton, science and spirituality have been like oil and water, like I said before. They don't mix. They believe thought has absolutely no influence on matter, and matter, obviously, because it's dead substance, can have nothing to do with thought energy. But we find actually they intermingle together. New science has proven that. Scientific method was designed to avoid superstitions, and it was sacrilege at the time of most religious writings to examine the human body or to challenge the authority of the church. So we have been brought up with ideas that the world is flat and the earth is the center of the universe, and so on and so on and so forth, and things we don't understand, we make assumptions about, and then we buy into those assumptions and claim them as truths. Science did us a great service in eliminating that process. So we have started to realize that spiritual principle is natural law. That's all Ernest Holmes talks about. The spiritual principle is natural law, and the law works when we use it. Of course, the law doesn't work when we don't use it. I love the writings of Thomas Troward because he talks very scientifically. He takes the basic hypothesis of a truth that he claims to be a truth, and then he goes through this process of logical ideas and things that prove this to be true, and then so this proves that to be true, and this proves that to be true, and he goes through this really long process, a scientific process of proving a spiritual hypothesis, and he comes to a very definite conclusion at the end. Now, most of us are a little mind-boggled when we read Thomas Troward because it takes a long time and a lot of energy and a lot of sitting and thinking and pondering about what he's saying. But it makes perfect sense. And we realize that which we believe and that which we practice in this teaching is logical, reproducible. And not only for me, if I can do it, you can do it. As Deborah read from Ernest Holmes. If I can do it, if you follow the same process, the same will be true for you as well. Does that sound like spiritual woo-woo stuff? No, it sounds scientific, doesn't it? Science of mind has realized that we can be both. We can be scientific and we can be spiritual. We don't have to believe in Santa Claus or disproven religious doctrines just because somebody told us that's the truth. We can actually investigate it and see how it works in our own lives and find the truth for ourselves. What I have found is what Jesus said 2,000 years ago is totally in alignment with science of mind teachings and modern scientific studies today, and all philosophies through the ages. Church doctrines are developed to support specific agendas to validate church truths, not universal truth. John Shelby Spong is Episcopal bishop, and he wrote a lot of books. Some of the titles will tell you the basic nature of his thinking. He says, Jesus for the non-believer, Christianity must change or die, and resurrecting the Bible from the fundamentalists. Now, he's talking about Christianity. I'm not here to poo-poo Christianity at all. But he was saying that a lot of times we get lost in the doctrines and the church beliefs about things more so than we pay attention to the actual teachings of the person it was founded upon. And so he says when we go back to the teachings of Jesus, we get much more information and more critical understanding than we do by looking at miracle stories. And you've heard me talk about that many times in the past. Einstein, one of the most famous scientists we know of, and I said this last week, he says there are two ways of looking at life. One is as if nothing is a miracle, and the other is as if everything is a miracle. And he's not saying this to disprove the existence of miracles or the power of miracles. He's saying that we don't have to choose between one or the other. We can either live in the essence of both. We can do both. We can be spiritual and logical at the same time. That's what this teaching is about. Now, Deborah and I, when we were going through ministerial training, we studied with a lot of quantum scientists. And none of those quantum scientists would ever come to the point of saying absolutely that consciousness is God, as Deborah did. She said, my name for God is consciousness. They would never say that because as a scientist, they know belief has nothing to do with the scientific process, and so therefore they can't use that word. However, they can talk about consciousness, and they can say that it works basically the same way. Well, in my mind, I have made the connection that God is the source of all that is. And that is quantum energy, basically. So science, new science, current science, is teaching the same thing that we are teaching here in terms of spirituality. Holmes calls science of mind the science of spiritual psychology. I think it's a fascinating way of looking at it. The science of spiritual psychology, because we use thoughts to create reality in our lives. We use thoughts to change conditions in our lives. In fact, we use thoughts to actually put us into depression and sad, challenging areas in our life. We can also use thought to take us out of that. As Sarah said so beautifully, we can use thought, and so therefore he calls science of mind the science of spiritual psychology. He says there is one mental law in the universe, and where we use it becomes our law because we have individualized it. There's one cosmic law, one universal law, and if we exist within it, it is all we are. It is part of who we are, and it is all we are. So therefore, we must be able to use it. It is the essence of all that we are. He also says the entire problem, excuse me, I don't even have a mic, but I can't blame it on the mic. It's my tongue. The entire problem of limitation, evil, suffering, and uncertainty is not God ordained, but is the result of ignorance. Yikes. Do you like to think of yourself as ignorant?
Sometimes.
Well, don't. Change your thinking. Change your life. The problem of limitation, evil, and suffering and uncertainty is not God ordained. It is not a true law until we make it so in our thought processes. And the reason we do that is because we are ignorant of how to actually use the law correctly. When we use the law correctly, limitation, evil, suffering, and uncertainty vanish into the nothingness from which they came in the first place. He says the storehouse of nature may be filled with good, but this good is locked to the ignorant. Once again, do you want to open the storehouse of good? Remove your ignorance. Understand how to use the law. I would guess 99% of what we talk about here on Sunday mornings is how to use the law. It's there. It's available. It's waiting for you. All you have to do is awaken to it and use it. I remember when I was 16 and going to driver's ed class, and they said, ignorance of the law is no excuse. If I'm speeding or going through a stop sign, I can't say, well, I didn't know that was the law. It doesn't matter. The law doesn't care. I fought the law and the law won. It always works that way. When we begin to understand how to use the law, we can benefit through it. It's really just that simple. The very last sentence in this part of the science of mind says, the mind which we discover within us is the mind that governs everything. This is the thing itself, and we should recognize its simplicity. It really is that simple. You use the law, and it works. You can use the law in a negative way, and it works. You can use the law in a positive way, and it works. It's just that simple.
Yes, so I want to go back to 2 points that David made. One, the ignorance. I claimed yes, because I do believe that we are all ignorant of the law at times. I didn't like that word years ago because my dad used to call me an ignoramus, and I thought that was a put down. It definitely was. However, I've come to understand in science of mind that it's a blessing to recognize when I'm standing in ignorance. Ignorance meaning I can awaken to a new idea of how to use the law. I awaken to something in me that isn't working just right for me, and I'm the one that is causing it by the way I'm thinking.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I have been in this teaching for quite a long time, and I should be perfect by now, right? But I do have challenges, and I do bump into walls sometimes and go, what was I thinking? Ah, that's it, exactly it. What was I thinking? Why did I let myself get into this situation in the first place? And I come back to the word ignorance, and I look at it as the word ignorance. I know the law. For some reason, I'm ignoring the law, and I'm going through life in ignorance. Even though I know the truth, I'm not using it. As soon as I get back into the place where I recognize it, I'm fine.
Yes, I just heard that. Ignorance is bliss. So it is for those of us that understand what it really means and how we can make the change in that. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, you said, and I know you don't believe this, you said the law works when you work it and it doesn't work when you don't work it. And then later you clarified it, but I know your favorite saying, and I know he's going to share it one of these days.
It's in 3 weeks from now.
Okay, there you go.
So you'll have to
be
wait
here
until then.
every week because it's his favorite saying, and it is telling us that the law is always working. And so whatever we're thinking, we're creating more of. And if we don't like what we're creating, we have the power within us to change it. So I'm going to tell you a story about this thing itself, this eternal voice that is forever whispering within us. It's a story I told a long time ago, and you'll recognize these words, I think, Ho'oponopono. And first of all, I want to share some background about that. Those words themselves mean make things right. So when we are experiencing a moment of recognition that something around us is not working the way we desire for it to be, we're feeling out of sync, we have the power to let go of the ignorance, to work with the law, to experiment with the law. How exciting is that? That we get to experiment with the law of life, with our own life, with creating what we desire. So we make things right. It's an ancient Hawaiian practice that was used for years and years by the spiritual leaders, originally to resolve disputes and restore harmony within families, within communities, within marriages, so really within any relationship, yes? And I don't know about you, but we all have those times, right? Relationships, that's what life is all about. It was believed by them that conflict was the cause of illness. And not only the cause of illness, but the illness was caused by the breaking of spiritual laws. So not only are we feeling out of sync when something isn't right around us, but the spiritual laws of the universe are responding to us and embodying themselves within us. So a woman by the name of Morna Simeona began using this technique to focus on the personal process of healing herself and eventually becoming a teacher, healing herself within to heal others, to heal other relationships. And so she moved it not from just something that's external, but a conflict that can be internal and affecting us in that way. One of her students was Dr. Hugh Len, and his story is a miracle story. He adapted the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Now just listen to those words again. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. They're words spoken within yourself to take on and change something within you. He said that he used the prayer to cleanse his own consciousness, believing that the recognition and acceptance of the divinity within him was a process that could be used by anyone and that was life-affirming and life-transforming. So let's look at those 4 phrases because indeed we can look at them in so many different ways. And I know some people don't like the words I'm sorry because they don't like the I am followed by anything in the negative. Well, I don't know about you, but I remember the time in my life where I first began using those words to others. Any and every time that I felt that I had wronged someone or said something that if I had said it differently or hadn't said it at all would have been so much better for me. Maybe for them too, but definitely for me. So the words I'm sorry in this prayer are taking total responsibility for everything in my life. I am taking responsibility for whatever is going on in my life by simply saying, I'm sorry within me, healing revealing healing in the cells of our very body. He says that he used these words to take total responsibility simply because it is in my life means it is my responsibility. If I'm the one thinking about it, I'm the one experiencing it, it's my responsibility to do something about it. Forgive me. This allows the divine within me to cleanse and clear, to release, to let go. The words thank you are words of gratitude. Gratitude for the life that we have each been given. And I love you. Wow. I know some people have a difficult time saying that to their loved ones. You know I don't, because you know that my kids in their younger years would say, love, 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 is that all you have to say? If you have one word to say, and it's love, it is life transforming for you. It may be for others, but absolutely for you. Loving ourself and loving our capital S self, the self within us. So his story goes that he worked at the Hawaii State Hospital and he walked through the ward every day. He did not meet with patients for the typical kind of therapy that we think of. He would walk through the ward and he would look over the patients' files. And at the time, there was a lot of chaos in the ward. There were brawls even between not just the patients themselves, but between the patients and the staff. And he began repeating, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. As he would sit with the files or as he would walk through the ward, he would just think these words and allow the cleansing within him to take place. His co-workers said that he was a cheerful man by nature anyway, and that every time he walked in, there was a tranquil disposition about him. He repeated the mantra to cleanse his own consciousness. And things began to change. Eventually, the people who had called out sick regularly were showing up for work. And the patients in the ward were either released or moved to a lower security area. And when he was asked what he thought caused the healings and the shift, he said, I was healing the part of me that created them. In our lives, we have opportunities to create monsters of those around us, simply by the way that we think about them. And the one it's affecting is us. We can let go of that. We don't have to carry that. Taking total responsibility in our life means taking responsibility for everything in our own life. Law is governed and directed by thought. So in closing, I've written what I'm going to call a prayer. It is a prayer which is a summary of this part of the book because I invite you to read this chapter, this part of the book, this first part of the introduction, and to make it your own. But since I know some of you might not do that, I invite you to close your eyes and to make these words from the writing, from the reading, your own. The thing itself, it never plays favorites. There is nothing supernatural about it. There is only one mind. Although we experience two states of consciousness called our conscious and unconscious. There is limitless power at our disposal, and we are drawing from it what we think into it. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. All our thought is creative, and it's the road to our personal freedom. And that road is not a mystery, rather it is a discovery, for which we have been left alone to discover. So we must learn that trusting it will make us happy, prosperous, and well. The divine nature is in us and lives itself as us. My life is divinity personified and individualized, and so it is.
So it is.